Welcome to the Married Therapists.
Your favorite relationship podcast.
I'm Luis.
And I'm Amber.
So today we're going to jump into a little bit of our stories. For those of you guys who do know us, we know that we have both been in abusive marriages. And so today we are going to jump into Amber's story and just hear about her marriage that she was in before and what unfolded, how that happened, things like that. And this is something that I love hearing her tell. Obviously, I hate that she went through it, I hate that you went through it. But every time you tell it, I feel like you are just stronger, and so I see your healing more and more every time. And so it's really beautiful to see that healing unfold and that situation, as difficult as it was, hasn't kept you down. You are stronger because of it. So I love hearing it. And so I know it's hard to tell it every time, but also I know that you have gotten stronger from it. So
Well,
um
thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. And so I guess we'll just jump in. How did you meet this guy? Where did you find him? Where did you come from? Tell us the beginning of how that happened.
Yeah, so I actually met him through the Yellow Pages. Just kidding. I met him through grad school.
Okay. So you guys were like in class together. Was he like top of the town? Were you like, oh my gosh, I want to be with this guy? Like, what was the vibe when you guys first met?
Yeah, I chuckle because it was the exact opposite. I've gotten that question a lot, and it couldn't be any further from the truth. I was not looking, so I didn't notice him. And honestly, it was nothing to see.
Oh no.
I had just gotten out of a 5-year on and off again relationship.
Mm,
And so I was just trying to heal from that. I was heartbroken. And
yeah.
so really just on a journey of self-discovery. I remember I took a class on codependency because I was just like, what is going on with me?
Yeah.
So just really grinding with school. And then when we did link up, which like sounds funny.
Yeah.
It was through a particular project that we had in class.
Okay.
I just remember driving home, having a question about it, and obviously I don't want to text and drive. And at the time, I don't think there were voice memos, so I just remember being like, "Hey, can I call you to go
Mm,
over this project?" And the rest was history. We started talking and spending more time with one another, and then that just developed into us being an official couple.
gotcha. It was more like circumstantial. You guys ended up in the same place at the same time,
Yeah.
and it would just like, okay, you're here. Cool. You're like talking to me. I'm talking to you. I'm feeling some vibes. And so just went from there.
Yeah, and when I look back, I'm like, okay, I got out of this on and off again situation that I wanted to stay in.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know now it wasn't meant to be, but I was rejected from
Mm,
that person, and so I'm trying to figure it out and heal. And then I'm in school and I'm talking to this person who is accepting me. So it was appealing. It
yeah.
was an attractive situation, right? Nobody wants to really sit in the sadness and
Yeah.
things like that. And so I needed time. Looking back now, obviously, it was one of the worst decisions I've ever made. But I was just wanting to be happy and wanting to be seen and heard and known, and at the time, that's what I thought he was providing.
Okay, so it's like you were in a really vulnerable place already emotionally because of the
Yeah,
relationship that just ended, and so you were just like maybe even willing to overlook some even potential red flags at the beginning because he's
yeah,
giving you like attention. It's like, okay, I'm have someone give me attention again. Like I'm in that place where I want to be again.
right, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so when did it turn into a relationship and what were some red flags that you missed early on?
Yeah, so it was a pretty quick process from talking to being exclusive. I couldn't really tell you the time frame on that, but I do know we told each other that we loved each other sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, I didn't see a ton of red flags, but I would say the first red flag that I can remember was when he told me I've got a lot of demons.
Oh, yeah, I would say that's a red flag.
Talking
Yeah.
about just how troubled he was, and, of course, now I'm like, "Okay, if somebody says that,
Believe
that
them.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty heavy, and it's a serious thing to dive into." But at the time, I said, "Oh, we've all got demons." I don't
Yeah.
think I said demons, but I think I said, "Oh, we've all got issues. We've all got challenges. It's okay." So, he knew enough about
Mhm.
himself to say that, and that was I'm grateful, right? In hindsight that he told me about himself early on, but obviously it sucks that I didn't see it for what it was.
Yeah. Okay. And so you guys were in a relationship. He mentions these demons that he has. So when did you like start to see like in real time things aren't great with him, but then just kind of stayed? Like what were some red flags that you saw in real time?
Yeah, a big thing was that I was a secret. So,
Mm,
at this point, and as far as timelines, this is all happening fall of 2016. So we officially started talking, I believe, early November. And then I want to say, yeah, right before our Christmas break is when he was telling me that he's not going to tell his family. I'm just going to kind of keep this on the low, which red flag
right.
number, whatever it was at the time. I don't want to be anyone's dirty little secret,
Yeah. Yeah.
but he told me it's because I was previously in a relationship where basically he lost his mind. It's a long story, but he made a lot of poor decisions. Thousands and thousands of dollars were lost. School was impacted. It was just a really um, dark time. He was making really poor decisions and he was very young. His family had no idea. He would take the car and drive to a different city to visit this person.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it's just a really complex, volatile situation that not only negatively impacted him, but his whole family. And so, because that happened, within their family, they basically had a rule of anytime you want to get with someone, you need to let us know.
Mm,
We need to be there to guide you because we don't want you to make the same mistake.
yeah. And I guess even at that point, it's like they were blaming the other person. They weren't even taking responsibility for the things that he did in the whole situation, right? It's like you were in this relationship and you were making all these poor decisions, and it's because of her. And so now, anytime you get with someone, we have to know about her.
Yeah, well, I will say, I think it, I think they actually thought the opposite because he was older than this girl.
Okay.
So I think it was, son, we don't trust you. You did this, this, and this, which cost a lot. And so we love you. We're here to support you, which means any kind of relationship you're trying to get into in the future needs to go through us. But at this time, he was in his late 20s and he didn't
Mm,
want to do that. It had been years since he was in his early 20s, I believe, when the first situation happened. And so he was just like, you know what? I don't need to tell my parents I'm 28. And of course, I'm like, okay, no, that makes sense. If any family is going to want to protect, their kid, but at a certain point, you kind of have to just relax and,
yeah.
and trust them and hope that they've grown. So again, looking back now, obviously that's a major problem. But at the time, I was like, okay,
Makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you are this secret. And so how long were you a secret? And then were there more red flags beyond that, like shortly after? Like when I guess tell me that progression, like what happened afterwards.
Yeah, so I was a secret from the beginning of November until I would say, I think the beginning of January.
Wow.
So at the time, his mom and his brother, they went to a different country
Mm,
to visit family for Christmas for an extended period of time. So it was just him and his dad at home.
mm,
So he just had to keep me a secret from his dad.
gotcha.
And so once they came back in town is when he was compelled to tell them about me, right? I'm grown, I can do it, it's fine. He told them about me and all hell broke loose. So my ex and his family, they were not black. And the big issue was, oh my gosh, you're dating a black woman. They were freaking out. Unfortunately, almost all of the family members had some kind of a negative experience with a black person in their life. And I will say it's pretty significant. Some of the situations the authorities were involved, right? So, okay, that happened. That being said, of course, not every black person is like that. And so they
Yeah.
were just not only worried about him being with me, but they were really worried about my family. They kept saying, well, we don't know what her family is like, thinking that my black family is going to be exactly
Yeah.
like all of the Black people that were in their lives and traumatized them. It really was a trauma response
Yeah.
that they were having. And so, of course, hearing that
Yeah.
sucked. And then later I found out allegedly one of the family members was picking me apart. You know, I'm fat and I'm too dark and my hair is fake and this and that. And so I'm feeling some kind of way about that. Anyways, he's telling his family about me. They're flipping out. And then I remember, was texting me and letting me know play by play everything that was happening. And the way that he described it was like, my house is on fire. It's a crisis. They don't accept you. And then it just escalated to where he told me I don't feel safe in my house emotionally, mentally. This is just a lot. And essentially, like an SOS help.
Yeah.
And he didn't say, "Can I come over?" But it was inferred
Yeah.
that he wanted to get out of there. So, of course, at the time, I'm his girlfriend. I wanted to support him. So I said, "Okay, yeah, you can come to my house." Now, it was just, "Hey, you're having some crazy family dynamics, like, come to my house for a break."
Like a temporary break.
Little
Yeah.
did I know he, would come and never leave.
You're living with your sister at this time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I'm a twin, and my sister and I were living together. So, yeah, it wasn't like I was living alone and it was this easy thing.
Yeah.
And so I remember talking to her about it, and she was like, "Yeah, for sure." So he came to my house with a backpack. Nothing more. He had $200 to his name.
Okay.
And
Solid.
I found out he did not have a car.
Oh,
So the time we were talking, which again wasn't long, but at this point, maybe it's about 6 weeks, 6, 8 weeks, something like that. He was driving a car to class, and there were times we were sitting in his car talking and doing other things, but I realized that car was his mom's. So he's coming to me with nothing. And in addition to feeling like, "Oh, I can't be at my house because it's an unsafe place," he was in shambles so much to where he felt like he couldn't even go to school. And at the time, he was further along in the program. So he was going to be done. This is January of 17. He was going to be done in August, but he decided to drop out of school. His parents
yeah.
were paying for it, and he didn't want to go into debt and get a loan because he was debt free. And so he was just really struggling. So to clarify, at the time, you know, he did not wanna stay in his house, not only for that moment, but indefinitely. Like, I cannot see myself going back because I wanna be with you, and they don't
Yeah.
accept you, so basically in his brain, it was my family or you, and I'm choosing you. So, then he decided to go no contact with his family just because, again, they weren't in alignment, and
Right.
so he has no family, no car, no money, no job. He was focused on school, and we have internships and stuff like that. And so that's why he wasn't working. But yeah, that's where he was. Now, of course, at the time, I'm like, wow, I'm so sorry this is happening. I want to be there to support you. I was trying to help him figure out this relationship with his family. I will say I noticed that he was very emotionally dysregulated during that time. He could not even get out of bed. You
Mhm.
know, that's kind of what we were dealing with. And of course, again, I am trying to be as empathetic and
Yeah.
as compassionate as I can. That being said, adulting, right?
Right.
So we have to pay for things and survive. And I was working, but part time because I was focused on grad school. And so I just remember giving him time, but then eventually being like, okay, what's the plan when it comes
Right.
to employment since you decided to drop out of school? And that was another one of the big issues that popped up in the beginning was he was allergic to work. He was anti-work. He did not want to go to work. And I could not support him
Mhm.
on my, you know, minimal paycheck. And even of course, you know, when you have a roommate, that really helps with rent. But like I had other bills.
Yeah.
And so I just remember being frustrated, but kind of feeling bad that I was frustrated because he was just in
Yeah.
shambles. So it's like I'm trying to tread lightly. But I remember not only was I trying to help him out when it comes to various employment opportunities, but so was my mom and so was my sister. We're all really resourceful. And I just remember he wasn't even like, "I can't because I'm just so this and that." It just was like I'm not gonna do it.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm like, "Okay, well, again, the bills aren't gonna pay themselves." And then finally, he did decide to Uber, and that was only because I had a friend who was Ubering, and at the time, they had a special where you got, like, a $200
Mm.
credit if you signed up. And so I told him, "Hey, we've got $200 if you sign up." So he did Uber, but it was very, very part-time, and he
And since he doesn't have a car, he's using your
he
car.
was using my
Okay.
car to Uber. So my job at the
Yeah.
time, I was working with special needs kids. They were military families, and it paid really well, but, it wasn't like a full-time
Right.
job, so I was just doing that, around my school schedule. So he would drop me off at work and then Uber for a little bit and then pick me up.
Okay.
So that was his way of being like, "Okay, here."
Yeah, I'm financially contributing to this
Right.
situation. Okay, so you guys are still dating at this point. So when did it turn in? Because it sounds crazy already. And so when did it turn into marriage, and why did it turn into marriage, given where it was already?
Yeah. Okay, so this is, end of January of 2017. Just coming from a religious background,
Mm,
I did not want to live with someone who wasn't my husband. And so what's happening is I'm dating this guy and then this crisis happens and he's living with me and my sister and I felt really guilty about that. And so I just remember him and at the moment I was saying, "Oh, I'm in love," right? And it's you and me against the world. And so I remember him asking like, "Do you want to get married?" And I said, "Yes." And we got married a week or so after that through the court.
oh my gosh.
Um,
So a week or so after he moved in, or no,
no,
after he,
so he moved in at the well, I don't maybe mid-January, maybe beginning, I can't remember, and so we got married February 8th. So it just was
a
very
few weeks.
quick.
Yeah.
Um, that wasn't the plan. I was cool with just dating him, but again, I just felt like this is the right thing to do.
Right.
Again, looking back now, absolutely shouldn't have done that. Worst decision of my life, but in the moment, it was what felt right. And unfortunately, and a lot of people who are raised in similar households can probably attest to this. As soon as you get married, like not only does the guilt go away for you, but the judgment from other people
Right.
and the whispers and all of that goes away too. And I felt that immediately as soon as I got married.
Yeah.
And so I was grateful obviously to feel that.
Yeah, and I can imagine for you, like, the fact that he was, quote, unquote, "choosing you" despite the craziness of his family, felt like, "Okay, he's sacrificing a lot for me," and it felt like love, and really, in retrospect, it's like the first sign of manipulation, right? He's, like, showing that he's, like, making himself dependent on you, and so then you're
Yeah.
feeling guilty for, like, kicking him out. It's like, "Well, you can't kick me out now. I'm here." So he's just like now he's just there.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and so you're living with your twin and you're married. So how long did that last? Like, were you and your now husband are living with your sister? Like, how did that transpire?
Yeah. So our lease was not up until August of that year.
Oh my
So
gosh.
we were there for 8 months.
Jeez. Okay. And then during that 8 months, was the abuse, did it just like progressively get worse? Like, what did those 8 months look like?
Yeah. Well, living with her did serve as a protective factor, right? People act up, but most of the time they try to conceal it when
Right.
other people are there. And so there was some stuff that was popping up, but I will definitely say it exacerbated a lot once we moved out on our own
Mm,
because it was just him and I, and there were no witnesses or
right.
anything like that. So going backwards a little bit, as far as abuse goes, one of the first things that popped up was this whole shower situation.
Mm,
So, of course, I'm a person of faith, wanted to go to church every week because that's how I grew up.
hmm.
Every single Sunday, I was in church. That was a really, really important thing for me. And it was not for him. And so I remember asking, are you okay going to church with me? And before he moved in and all that, he was like, yeah, I don't mind checking it out. Well, once he moved in, I think there was one Sunday maybe like he didn't want to go or something like that. And I remember being disappointed. Anyways, something that he loved to do is take showers with me. And so what he told me was, I will go to church with you if you will take showers with me. So in the beginning, I was okay with it, right? And, when a lot of us think of taking showers together with your partner, it's like, "Ooh, that's really sexy and romantic."
Yeah.
So I was like, "Okay," I was open to it, but unfortunately, it just turned into something crazy because he would not let me take my own showers. So it wasn't just here or there. I like taking showers with my wife, and if we could do that every now and then, that would be great. It was no, you and me shower together every single day. And I remember pretty early on, I realized I didn't want to do that
Yeah.
because it wasn't sexy. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't anything like
It was
that.
force and it was control.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was, yes, exactly that. Mm, Without going into too much detail, there was just a couple of things, that were happening in the shower that I wasn't comfortable with.
Yeah.
But again, it was just a lot of manipulation
Yeah.
going on. And so I remember at a certain point, hating it, dreading it, and I told him, "This is a personal hygiene practice. I should be able to take my own showers." And he just didn't hear it. It didn't really make sense for him. And then I will say too, with the church thing, eventually we stopped going to church.
Mm.
Like, I think maybe in the beginning there were certain things going on, maybe like a party or something. Um, to where, we decided to skip, but then eventually that just kind of fell off
Yeah.
and I was disappointed with that. But of course, did the showers fall off? No. The
Right.
showers were a thing that was just going to happen every single day. And I just remember feeling caged in,
Yeah.
feeling like this is not normal. But at the time I did not think, this is abuse.
Right.
This is a abnormal thing that should be happening.
It's like this is like not like a wifely duty, but this is just a part of marriage. It's compromise. Sometimes you do things you don't necessarily love doing.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's so sad because I know how much you love showers. Your shower is like a whole spa experience. It's like so hot in there. I know you have music sometimes, and so like I knowing how much you love showers now, it's really sad that you weren't able to do that in that whole marriage. And so I am sorry you experienced that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. And so you're welcome. So going from there, so that's all going down. And did it continue to escalate, or was that kind of the extent of it while you were living with your sister, and then when you moved out, it exacerbated even more?
I did experience some stuff. And yes, it did escalate when we moved out, but the things that I experienced were, again, the extreme emotional dysregulation, which would lead to suicidality. I can share a couple experiences that I had while we were together, but to answer your question, it did escalate when we moved out. And so a memory that pops up right now is this baby shower that my sister and I and him went to together. And I just remember talking to the other people that were there and then turning to him just to check in. And he was in shambles. He was pouting, he was frowning. He was talking to someone and then all of a sudden, someone else comes in late, and all the attention is drawn to that person. That's what made him really sad. So then, when I turned around to check in with him, he's telling me, one, I'm ignoring him, and two, nobody even cares about him because he was talking
Oh
to
my
this
gosh.
person
Yeah.
and they didn't continue the conversation.
It's such an extreme reaction to like a very simple, natural
Yes.
thing.
And I remember actually doing like a little social skills kind of talk,
Yeah.
like you just kind of have to jump in there. And then also, if the focus shifts to someone else, like you just grab it back. I remember saying, you gotta be a bulldog. So and so comes in and everybody greets that person, and you just be like, oh, yeah. So what I was saying was da 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 da. But in his brain, it was just like, no, well, I'm talking to this person and they need to be the one to come back. They shouldn't have even been distracted. I'm like, that's not how it works in social settings.
Yeah.
But I will say the main qualm that I had with that situation was me. I wasn't paying attention to him, and that was not okay. So I remember basically going back and forth with him at this baby shower in a corner and missing a lot of
Yeah.
incredible moments. I want to say maybe, I don't know, eating dessert or maybe opening the presents or something like that I missed. Afterwards, or afterwards touching base with my sister, she was like, "Are you guys okay?" And I told her the experience, and she was just like, "Oh my gosh, that's crazy." So that was a big, theme in the whole marriage
Like
is
he's
that
having like emotional reactions and blaming you for it.
yes, it
Yeah.
was always that. So then I learned to walk on wanna poke the beast kind of thing, and he would use words like, "You're being selfish and you're being inconsiderate and you're being disrespectful." So I was always trying to be perfect so I can be a good wife, and people who've been in that kind of situation know it's so exhausting
Yeah.
because you can't keep up. You can never do enough to please the person.
Yeah, you're just like being beat down every time. And it's like you're either getting nothing or you're getting criticized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in addition to kinda going back and forth and him saying these words to me, we would go home and it would just escalate to the point where he felt so bad he wanted to take his own life because it was my fault.
Right.
And I would be begging him to stay and to give me another chance kind of thing. Not give me another chance like he was leaving the relationship, but like give me another chance to do right by you. And so it was like, okay, great. So it was very much this cycle
Yeah.
where things would be fine. And then there would be a situation and he would blow up. And then I would apologize. And he would hardly ever apologize. And maybe sometimes he did. And bring flowers, so to speak, to calm everything down. And then it was only a matter of time before there was I would call them blow ups. So I would say no lie, we probably had 100 blow ups throughout the entire year that we were married.
Jeez. Okay. And so he's just like, and that's such an emotionally abusive thing to do, right? Is to like threaten suicide. Because on the one hand, it's like you do it all the time, you threaten this, and I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to like
Oh yeah.
think you're lying one time and then it actually happens and you just feel guilt, right? And so it's just
Right.
like this constant emotional turmoil that you're in because it's like, I don't want to be responsible for his death, right? And so,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
And it was just really crazy because he would tell me all the traumatic situations that happened to him as a kid, or really focused on the things that happened to him in high school. And so everybody gave up on me. People were abusive to me. Nobody cared about me. I was invisible. I don't want to continue feeling that way. So that puts pressure on me, right? I don't want to be like those people. But in hindsight, what I learned after the fact was he had so many unresolved traumatic experiences that deeply impacted him. Trauma just really messes you up all across the board. So, is it his fault that the experiences happened? Absolutely not. But it is our responsibility to work
yeah,
on it and improve and grow and get yourself help. And so I do remember saying, "Hey, you need some help. I see you're struggling
yeah,
and it breaks my heart. So, what about going to therapy?" Now, of course, we're in school, to become therapists, to help other people. And actually one of his internships was at a school in their counseling program. And anyways, he was like allergic to therapy. He just did not want to get help. And so that was really bizarre. You're
yeah.
telling me you have demons, you're telling me that you're suicidal and things like that. Well, that all points in the direction of someone who would
Desperately needs therapy.
yeah, exactly. So, it was just this vicious cycle just kinda going round and
Mm,
round and round. But yeah, so that's what was happening while we were living with my sister, and then we moved away and things really escalated. So he isolated me hardcore from friends, from family, became a lot more controlling as far as I remember I'd have to text him every tiny little thing. And it's not like text me when you get home, or text me when you
you get to where you're going.
yeah,
Yeah,
so that I know you're safe, but it was just like, let's say he texted me about something random and I didn't respond because I was busy. At this time I was doing school, internship, and working. So I couldn't always be by my phone. Then he would blow up my phone, and then when I would come home, I would get, quote unquote, like spanked,
Yeah.
emo
Scolded.
emotionally and
Yeah.
mentally because I didn't respond. And so it was just like, "Who are you with?" And like, "What are you doing?" And "I needed you and you weren't there for me, and it's because you're rude and selfish and inconsiderate and you need to be better." And then of course I'm like, "Hey, I'm sorry I was doing this and that." And he's just like, "Well, can I even trust you?" Like just that crazy spiral, which sounds really dramatic probably for people hearing it, but that's actually what happened.
Yeah.
And then he had a great memory, so he would like pull random situations that happened, like, well, and then 2 weeks ago you did this, and then yesterday you did this, and so it was like 6 counts against
So
me,
he like creates this perceived pattern of behavior to
right?
throw at your face. It's like you always do this because look at these different examples. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember being like, okay, I'm gonna work on it. And I believe I had a note in my phone of all the things that I needed to work on, and it was just an exhaustive list. Like, man, I can't do anything right. And mind you, no one had ever told me the things that he's telling me. At this time, I'm 29, and wow, you are the only person who's ever told me this. And I remember telling him that, and he was just like, because I was starting to see the light,
Yeah.
and he was just like, well, everybody else was basically lying to you. Everybody else was just, a people pleaser or whatever. And
I'm the only one telling you the truth.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
like, statistically, that doesn't really work out.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I do remember also he would throw things around the house, like when he would get into his fits. And I remember being so scared.
Yeah. It is scary.
Yeah. And it would be loud or it would be close to me, and I would react like a normal person. And he would be like, "What? Like, why are you acting like that? I didn't hit you." He was real big about that because early on, I remember telling him, "If you hit me, I'm leaving." And so it was always just like, like, "I'm not touching you. I'm not touching
It's
you."
like a child.
Yeah. And then another thing he started doing was like these crazy tantrums where he would have a meltdown and he would literally fall to the floor in a fetal position crying
My gosh. Yeah.
because of how hurt and distraught he was. And for clarification purposes, these issues were simple, tiny, random little things. My perfect no. So were there maybe some things I could have worked on, I could have altered? Sure. But these 100 blow ups were not that. It
Yeah.
was a tiny little thing of went to the bathroom and were there too long, and I don't know what you were doing and you kept me out here by myself and you're rude and you're selfish and you're, so it's stuff like that that didn't make sense. That
Yeah.
was just like
It's
crazy.
like you're not a newborn baby. I don't need to be watching every time.
Yes. And I just remember feeling suffocated.
Yeah.
We at this point, he returned to school, and so it's like we're in school together, we share a car together. I can't go anywhere without you. It wasn't like I needed his permission, but it was just like he kept me so busy. That's another thing too. Like, let's go downtown and like let's do this and let's do that. And then anytime I was with someone, it was like blowing my phone up, or I would come home and it's like, wow. Like I remember going out with my mom, and so okay, we got married through the court, and then we were planning an actual wedding that following year. So I remember I went out with my mom to look at wedding dresses, and we went out to eat, and it was a couple hours. And I remember when I came back to him, being excited, wanting to tell him, "Ooh, it was so great. I tried, this and this and this on." And he was just like, "You were with your mom for a long time." And he went to his parents' house because he couldn't ever be alone. And he was like, "Yeah, me and my family were all talking about it, and we were saying that's like kind of crazy that you're spending so much time over there." And I just remember being like, I can't do anything
Oh
right.
my
I
gosh.
can't even have a very what's supposed to be a very magical and beautiful moment with my mom without someone criticizing it and talking down to me regarding my decision to spend time with my mom.
Yeah.
And so I just remember being like, wow, this sucks. But also like, well, I got married to him, right? Maybe this is marriage. But also thinking, man, this is marriage. This is it for me.
It's like you got.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
literally felt like, again, did not realize though that this was an abusive relationship, because like most people, I was thinking physical abuse,
Right.
right? Being slapped and pushed and punched, right? There were no black eyes or broken ribs or anything like that. And so, this is my lot in life and I've just got to endure it.
And so, you guys are living on your own now, isolated, and things are escalating. And so, when was the point when you were just like, I need to get out? Like, when did you start to see like, this is not healthy. This is, and I don't even know if you saw that it was abusive in that moment, but when was the moment when you were just like, I need to get out?
Yeah, so there was a situation that happened in Hawaii where he was just blowing my phone up every single day. While I was there, I was in the hotel lobby just for hours every night talking and trying to help him out. And he was in the dark and suicidal and all of that.
So
Well,
you were in Hawaii and he was in San Antonio.
yes, it was a graduation trip that I went on with some friends, and he didn't want me to go, and so that just all became another blow up that we had. Anyways, coming back from Hawaii to San Antonio, because of inclement weather, our plane couldn't land. We actually got very low to the point where I could talk to him on the phone and explain what happened. He apparently, allegedly, went inside the airport and was talking to the people at the front desk who also agreed. Mind you, none of these people are pilots that the plane should land. So, what was going on? Our plane got so low, but we could not land. So, we actually went to Dallas. For those who know, Dallas is not exactly close to San
Yeah.
Antonio.
Like, what did he expect you to? He expect you to be like, hey, go to the pilot. Like, hey, my husband said you can land. You need to go back. Like, what was the
He was
expectation?
not a logical, reasonable, rational person, so that's $1 million question. Anyways, when he was talking to me on the phone, I was just like, I'm fine. Like, thank you for being concerned about my safety.
Yeah.
And anyways, he was just popping off and I remember crying like silently and my sister saw that. So anyways, my mom, fast forward a little bit, my mom's asking my sister like, "Hey, how was the trip?" And then she's like, "How was Amber?" And then my sister was just like, she was crying. He was yelling at her on the phone because we couldn't land the plane. So that tiny little thing was all that my mom knew about my relationship. Because again, everything was so secretive. I couldn't tell anybody anything. I was hardly seeing anybody. And so my mom was just like, that's not okay. So my mom staged an intervention. So him and I went over to my parents' house. My mom took me upstairs and she had me leave my purse downstairs so he couldn't call me. And my dad was downstairs with him and basically like locked me in the room kind of thing, sat me down and was like, "Are you okay?" Like I heard from sister that he was yelling at you. So to me that kind of seems like someone who has an anger problem, but are you okay? Like tell me. And oh my gosh. I felt so seen in that moment. I cried. I told her everything. She had no idea. He did safety planning basically.
Yeah.
Do you feel okay going back home? And she gave me, I think, some handouts. She's
I
just
love that.
she's just amazing. Again, even at that moment, we didn't use the word abuse, but it was just like you have a husband who yells at you
This
and
is unhealthy.
this is unhealthy, and
Yeah.
so I think you guys should get help. So, anyways, my Marine dad, retired 22 years, is having this conversation with him downstairs. And I remember my mom's like, "Are you okay to go home with him?" I said, "Yes." We were driving home. And I remember he was laughing at my dad's threats. Now, to clarify, there were not any kind of homicidal threats, but it just was like, we've got eyes on you.
Yeah. Like, we're watching you.
We're watching you. Like, just know she has a family who is gonna protect her and support her if you do anything crazy. And this person I'm married to is a whole 5'4", 100 and maybe at the time 120 pounds, soaking wet. The skinniest he got was 114 pounds. So he's just like trying to puff up and be like,
Like he can take your dad.
yeah, I was like, my dad who was like 5'10" and whatever. I was like, you're an idiot. Anyways, so that was weird. And then we came home and then he was like, what did you guys talk about? And I remember just shaking and being nervous, but being like, things have got to change. So I said, my mom asked me if you have an anger problem. And I told her, yes, I think you do have an anger problem. And he kind of paused a little bit and was like, yeah, but it's only because of you. So once again, pointing it back to me. Anyways, we went round and round. Eventually, I needed to go to bed. I was tired. So I went to my room. He wasn't ready. He needed to still process on his own. So he was in the dark in the living room, and
Weird.
allegedly he fell and hit his head on the doorknob, and of course it was loud, so that I come out the room, and he is talking kind of crazy as far as like the pattern of his speech and it being incoherent and stuff like that. And so, of course, I was like, oh, I think you have a concussion. So, what will a reasonable person do? Call 911. Or if you don't want to do that, let me at least drive you over there. No, he declined it. He did not want medical attention. You did this to me, right? It
So
was
you take care of
always
me.
yes. And I was like, I am not a medical professional. You're slurring your speech. Now, I don't know if he's the world's greatest actor or if this was real. I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just like, my husband is suffering. Let's go. And I remember going round and round with him, and he declined. Okay, go to bed, which we all know you should not go to bed if you have a concussion or, suspected concussion.
Yeah.
Fast forward the next day, he's at his internship, which is a school, and he goes to the nurse's office because I think he had a headache, or said, my head's pounding. And I forget what that nurse said, but basically kind of acknowledged it, but also like, "You're okay. Just, like,
Mhm.
rest." So if I had to guess, I would say he probably is faking it because
Yeah.
he was just very theatrical. He would make these
Just like helpless.
yes.
Yeah.
He would make these kind of grand
Mm.
claims and actions, very attention seeking. So, anyways, that intervention really fueled me. It
Mhm.
really made me see the situation from a different
Yeah.
perspective, realize how severe things were. At the time, it wasn't enough to be like, you need to leave, but it definitely was like, things have got to change. And so I believe it was right after that when we decided, okay, we need to go to therapy. So we went to couples therapy and individual therapy with the same person. And that therapist was the one who helped me realize this is abuse. So he never came out and said it like that in the beginning. He just slid me a paper, and it's the wheel of power and control. So there's these, I remember, 8 or 9 different components. And he told me, go through each one and see if it resonates with you.
Mhm.
And all but one resonated, and the only reason why one didn't was because it had to do with children and we didn't have kids. And so that really spoke to me. It was I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was just like things like, are you isolated? Do you get yelled at? And are things like thrown around? And do you feel safe? Do you feel like you're walking on eggshells? It was kind of questions like that. And I remember another thing he said is finances is a big reason why people stay. And so he just was like, get your own money, right? Like, have access to your own money. And you'd be like, okay, yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah.
Um, and so I loved my individual sessions. With his individual sessions, because we would talk about our individual sessions together. Sometimes he liked it and sometimes he didn't. But with the couple session, I remember pretty quickly he was like, you guys are ganging up on me. And I forget the line of questioning or
Yeah.
whatever, but basically like, hey,
Yeah.
it's two against one, which I think for sure that can happen in couples therapy. That's not what was happening. What
Yeah.
was happening was he was being called out
Yeah.
and it felt uncomfortable and he didn't like it. And so pretty quickly into couples therapy, he's like, I'm not going anymore.
Because it wasn't fitting his narrative that you're the problem.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I'm like, okay, well, I can't force you to do couples therapy, but I'm going to stick with individual. But I do remember when he dropped out, I was like, this is a catalyst because I'm willing to work. It's crazy now to say, but at the time I was like, I'm willing to work with you if you're willing to work on yourself,
Yeah.
but you don't even want to keep going. And it was early. I think we maybe saw him for 6 weeks. He was just like, nope, I don't want to go. So I'm like, okay, well, I can't keep doing this. And I remember talking to my therapist being like, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. Not complaining, but literally just being like,
Just
how
putting
can
the
yeah, like I remember asking him, what more can I do to help my marriage? And he was just like, Amber, you're doing enough. A marriage cannot thrive if only one person is doing the work. He said, what is he doing? And I couldn't answer that because he wasn't doing anything. In addition to stopping couples therapy, he wasn't adjusting anything regarding the power and control and isolating and getting in my face and making me feel bad. All that was still going strong. So, as far as what finally made me leave, well, we were approaching my birthday, and I remember he had this issue with my mom. So when it came to the people in my life, he would jump between like who he hated at the time.
Yeah.
It's like flavor of the month. So around that time was my mom. And so for something that was, I can't remember what it was, but of course
Yeah.
it wasn't rational. And so my mom's just like, okay, well, your birthday's coming up and I don't want to be with him. So I want to take, because I'm a twin, I want to take you and your sister out. Me and dad want to take you and your sister out, but I don't want to be around him. He hates my guts right now for something stupid. So he doesn't want to be with me. I don't want to be with him. And so I remember just being so nervous because I was like, I'm going to have to tell him that. And that's going to be a blow up number 101.
Yeah.
And I was just like, nope, I don't want to do it. And also, I now know I'm being abused. And I now know I'm with
Yeah.
someone who isn't wanting to acknowledge it or work on themselves in any way. And so I'm done. And I actually Googled, how much does a divorce attorney cost? And I remember calling my mom. She didn't answer. And I texted her. I was very calm. I was like, hey, it's not an emergency, but just want to let you know that I'm leaving him and getting a divorce. And shortly after she called me and she was like, okay. She's like,
What do you need?
yeah, yeah, are you good? And she actually wanted me to leave like right then and there. So this is January of 2018. Him and I both graduated grad school December of 2017. He got a job right away, and I was still working with the kids with disabilities, but I didn't get my first like big girl job because I was still wanting to study for my board exam.
Yeah.
And so his job did not require that specific license. So, anyways, I was home alone. And so she was just like, leave right now. And I was like, no, because he has my car. And one thing about me, I loved my car. And I was like, I'm not trying to have this battle with my car because I
Yeah.
couldn't trust him at all that he would give it back to me or
Right.
let me come and get it in any way. He would hold it hostage. And so I was just like, no, I'm going to wait till he comes home and then I'm going to go ahead and get out of there as quickly as I can. And so I remember texting my mom, okay, he just parked, and I later found out from the time I texted her that he just parked to the time I said I'm on my way was like 7 minutes. She was like, "Dang, that was fast." So anyways, he comes in the house and he sees that I'm dressed, which I never was dressed. I always had like pajamas on or
Yeah.
loungewear. He's like, "Where are you going?" And I was just like, "To my parents' house." He was just like, why? Is it because of, there was some blow up that happened, of course, right before that. Is it because of like that issue? And I was just like, I don't know what I said, but I was just like, I didn't use the word abuse. I said, this isn't working. It was pretty simple. And then he was like, I'm going to have a heart attack. Again, here come the theatrics. I'm gonna, this situation is gonna make me have a medical event. And I remember being like, nope.
Yeah. No.
I said, that has nothing to do with me. And then he's like, in my brain, I'm always thinking, he said, shoot, that's not working. What else can I pull out of my sleeve? So then he's like, you're making a rash decision. I said, nope, this is not a rash decision. And then, little third antic, he blocked the door. It was just like, you're not leaving. Um, and I remember saying, you cannot block the door. Like, that's actually criminal. And he was just like, man, because the whole time I was very docile. I was very compliant, very much a people pleaser, very much head down. I would never advocate for myself. So it was this new and improved Amber that he
Yeah.
had never seen before. And he, I think, probably was like, man. And I had my little bag packed and I left and got my car and texted my mom and never saw him again. That was the best decision of my life. Yeah, that whole year, 2018, I was technically married because I decided to do the divorce via something called pro se, which is when you file yourself instead of hiring an attorney because at the time I just couldn't afford it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so everybody loves this process. So everybody gets on the list. So it took a long time, but I was with my parents. Eventually I passed the board exam. I got my first professional job in pediatric hematology oncology at a hospital and then moved out into my own apartment and just felt so free and wonderful. So even though legally we were still married, I very much was separated
Yeah.
from him in every way. And then that December is when I officially got divorced. I never had to see him. I never had to do anything.
So when you left the house that one day, that was the last time you ever saw him?
Yeah, it was like at the end of January
Okay.
2018, and that's why it almost took a year. But I remember I actually had a divorce party with my sister and some friends just celebrating because it was so nice.
Celebrating freedom.
I remember because I changed my name at the time. I remember so desperately wanting to get my maiden name back. It was just like, oh, I'm separated from you
Mm.
in every other area besides this. And I was just like, give me my name back. And I felt so free. And so going into 2019 was just beautiful. And I continued to go to individual therapy and just I wound up taking, I think that spring, a boundaries class that really, really helped me out a lot and just rediscovering myself. So much of me was lost in that situation. I was a shell of a person. And so I remember just being like, what do I like? And it reminds me of Julia Roberts in Runaway Bride. She was with all these people, and then in the end, she has this scene where she's trying different eggs because she didn't even know what kind of eggs she wanted. And I remember feeling like that. I'm like, what do I like? What do I want? So I remember doing these nature walks all the time, like walking for miles and miles. I remember going to the movies by myself. I remember just putting myself out there as far as like meeting new friends. And then just I remember at the Pearl, this cool downtown area, they had yoga under the stars where they had free yoga. And there was a saxophonist who would walk around playing the saxophone as we did yoga under the stars and loving that.
That's awesome.
And just really starting to heal myself from the inside out. And so I did that for a couple of years and then that led me to you. So that is the story of what happened in that situation. It was devastating. It really messed with me, but I what do they say? Like I was knocked down, but I wasn't destroyed. Unfortunately, I did get a PTSD diagnosis because of it. But I am so fortunate that through doing all the things I just said, and then doing like EMDR, which is a type of trauma therapy, I have been able to reprocess my trauma in a healthy way to where it isn't debilitating anymore.
You can talk about it without like breaking down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I would always just break down and cry. And the other response I would have was just like immense anger to where my heart rate would just be elevated and I would get all clammy and my body was just like freaking out whenever I would talk about it. And another thing that would happen to me is when I would talk to friends and family about their relationships and they would tell me anything that was even slightly reminiscent of what I went through, I would be really on edge and at times kind of aggressive.
Yeah. It's like projecting your own trauma on them. Yeah.
Yes. And I knew, okay, we got to reel it in. And so, yeah, I'm happy to report that I am so much stronger as a
Yeah.
person. I like to say I'm Amber 2.0.
Yeah.
And definitely, I feel like I'm a domestic violence ambassador, right? When I was in it, I was sworn to secrecy. I couldn't tell anybody anything. And I remember vowing to myself, like, I'm never going to be silent. I'm going to shout it from the rooftops. And actually, I just ran into someone that I went to grad school with today, and we were talking about it. I
Yeah.
was just like, this is not okay. And what is it? Break the stigma, end the silence. I know are some popular
Yeah.
hashtags. And so I will forever, until the day that I die, be an advocate for everything domestic violence awareness.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think it's important. And you've mentioned it several times, like abuse isn't always physical. And oftentimes, like the emotional and mental abuse is a lot more difficult to deal with, because you
Yeah.
don't have the physical scars. It's harder to explain it to other people and like convince them that it's abuse, right? And then again, it's a lot of just work on your brain, whereas like the physical, yeah, there's physical and mental things that happen with physical abuse, but like with emotional, there's just a lot of rewiring that you need to do,
Right.
and so
Yeah, because you're beat down with this narrative of you should be better. You're not doing this.
yeah.
You're this. And that really gets to you. And
And it can show up in so many other places in your life, whether it's
yes,
relationships, friendships, work, like so many things can be impacted by the way that someone talks to you.
yeah, exactly. And what I came to realize after the fact was there was a lot of psychological manipulation, which a lot of people know as gaslighting, that was happening. And so that's a situation where you question your own sanity.
Right.
So it literally could be a situation like, I'm touching your knee right now, and he would say, I want you to touch my knee. You haven't touched it. And I'm like, no, I just did. He's like, no, you didn't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I literally did, but you're telling me that I didn't. And you're having this whole speech. So I start to think, did I touch your knee? So that sounds crazy probably to some people, but that's literally what I would experience time and time again was that didn't happen, or you're overreacting,
Yeah. Then you
or
start to lose trust in yourself.
yes,
Yeah.
or like you're being crazy. I remember afterwards second guessing myself with everything. And I remember actually like kind of praying and being like, I can't wait one day where I can actually be decisive and hold my head up high and be confident with whatever. Because, yeah, the whole time you're in that kind of a situation, your head's down and you're just not wanting to do anything that can cause an explosion. And so that was a really important thing for me to work on is be confident. Say what you mean what you say. Just pick something. Even something as simple as like, where do you want to go to eat? Just pick something.
Yeah.
Instead of be, I don't know, what do you want to do? And it's fine. Like I don't really care. And it's just like, no, have an opinion.
Yeah. Trust yourself, trust your gut, trust your like your likes and dislikes again.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. And again, it sucks that you went through it, and I am so proud of you for doing the work and
Mhm.
getting to the place that you are now. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're
I really appreciate it. As much as I wish I would have met you years and years ago, I'm so glad that we did meet when we did because you were able to get Amber 2.0 and I was able to get Louise 2.0,
Yeah.
and that's really beautiful. And I can't wait for you to share your story. It's very similar, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's very similar. And that's one of the things that, that Amber and I bonded on early on is just like how similar our paths were, even in regards to this. And so next week I will share my story and share just kind of what that looked like and, what all that entailed and how I healed from that. And so thank you guys for joining. And if you are being abused, whether it be physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, or otherwise, seek help if you can. We will put any resources that could be beneficial in the show notes. And so be sure to check those out if you or someone you know could use them.
Yes. And I just want to say, lastly, it is not your fault if somebody is treating you the way that I described or in any other ways. Yes, we all can work on ourselves and things like that, but we also know when something isn't right, when it's this overreaction. You should not be controlled. You should not feel like you're walking on eggshells. If somebody is yelling at you and throwing things and making you only be with them and not spend time with your friends and your family, that is not normal. They may disguise it and say, like, this is love and this is just because I care about you. That is not normal. You should
Yeah.
have every right to be able to hang out with your friends and your family without having a partner freak out. And so, anybody who's going through this, please know that there is help available. There's a ton of resources out there. And we definitely want to do what we can to give that to you guys so you guys can experience freedom. Thank you so much for listening.
Until next time.
Bye.